Hi, my name is Nacho, welcome back to the channel. And if you're anything like me, you love superhero movies. And after having a long time of highs and currently experiencing the lows, I want to talk about what I think is one of the best superhero movies ever that you probably never even heard about. Starring none other than Chris Evans. No, not that one. Also not that one. He wasn't exactly a superhero in that one. I'm talking about 2009 Push, a movie that came out almost 10 years ago. 14 years ago. What? 2009 was 14 years ago. What? Oh my god. Based on the screenplay by David Berla with a comic adaptation done later by DC, Push is one of the rare cases where a superhero movie is not based on a comic book, which according to articles gives it a freedom that most modern adaptations don't have. Which, now that we know how Marvel and other companies treat the source material, it's kinda redundant. Unfortunately, this movie fell under the radar pretty easily. Coming out at the beginning of the MCU era and not having a household name like Iron Man or Spider-Man to carry it, it was quickly overshadowed by its contemporaries, and it didn't perform that well in the box office or DVD sales. Do you guys remember DVDs?
It's been 84 years.
And because of that, it was pretty much forgotten. And I watched it back in 2009. I don't even remember how I came about it. I just had a DVD that said Push, that was even dubbed. I didn't watch the English version until years later, and the biggest complaint that people have on Rotten Tomatoes is that the story is confusing. And here's where I think it's not. Number one, it's a small world. One of the biggest criticisms that I have of all cinematic universes is that for every movie the stakes have to be higher and higher, to the point that you end up being forced into caring for people you know nothing about, like Planet Coachella from the Marvels. So the small and down-to-earth approach of Push makes it so much easier to relate to. The story is presented rather efficiently at the start. During World War II, the Nazis were looking into creating an army of supernatural humans, which, if you know anything about history, was somewhat true. That led to the creation of the first Psychers, briefly explained in the movie and later expanded in the prequel comics. After winning the war, the US got a hold of the Nazi plans and they started an army themselves, under the supervision of a nameless organization called Division, that has been using these powered individuals throughout the years to change the course of history. So just like that, you got your antagonists, you got their origins and motivations, and why we should be afraid of them. Even though a shady government body carrying ops to fulfill an agenda might sound a little bit far-fetched, right? So it's a story that, despite being fantasy, is very grounded on reality, which is also helped by the characters. Nick, Cassie and Kira are complex characters with a common goal: take down the Division. Nick lives on the run after his father told him to before getting killed by Carver. He doesn't use his powers to avoid drawing attention, which puts him in a precarious situation at the start of the movie, when shit starts hitting the fan and he is forced to quickly learn to power his way through problems, and he gets his ass whooped. Cassie is a teenage watcher with a bit of an attitude, who first approaches Nick following the plan laid out by her mom, who in a way is behind all the events that take place in this movie. Finally, Kira is Nick's love interest and potentially the new most powerful pusher in the world, given that she's the first one to survive the serum made to enhance psychic abilities, which makes her lab rat number 1 in the eyes of the Division. A very big reason why she wants to stay as far away from them as possible. All of them are being targeted by Carver, played by Jimon Hansu, who is imposing. As a mountain of resources and people at his disposal, he is scary as shit, and it makes us think that he's one step in front of our heroes the whole time, making him a truly formidable villain. Can you spot the difference? And this being a thriller, which is one of my favorite genres, it stands out from the different Marvel movies in the grittiness that the director wanted to portray in it. Our protagonists are constantly on the thread. Once you understand the powers, you get why they have to move all the time, why they have to hide in crowded places, why certain powers are so terrifying, and how, when taking that all into account, it's very satisfying when you see the different smart ways they go about fighting the Division. I'm trying not to spoil anything, but finally you got the world building. The one thing that makes me love this movie is what a solid base it has. All the powers we see fall into simple categories that are explained in really cool detail. Movers move stuff, not exactly with their minds, but through playing with the frequency of the object itself, meaning that certain objects can't be interacted with, which creates a potential weakness against them. Watchers can see the future in certain intervals and precision depending on their skill level, but are victim of something called tab, which are random events that can change the future in different ways. Pushers can push ideas into your mind, making you believe or make things that you don't want, like offing yourself with your own gun, but have to maintain a level of eye contact to do so. So there are rules for the powers that make them easier to power scale, but there are also limits that some users are able to surpass, like how Carver does. But it's simple enough that you are able to follow what's going on at any given time. And there's much more of them introduced in the comics and the movie, like shadows, porters, sniffers, stitchers, changers, and probably my favorite one of all, bleeders, which I like to call Karens, because their power is basically But even they have a cool explanation. You see those slits in their eyes? Those are implants they have that contract before they scream to protect them from bursting their own blood vessels. The structure, man, I love it. The movie was made with a budget of $38 million, a modern $51 million, and got back almost the same amount in the box office and the DVD sales. So it didn't really break the bank. In my opinion, not knowing that when I watched it, I was hooked. The effects hold up so well. Take for example the scene where Nick is fighting Victor and they stop bullets mid-air. The acting is so good. The names in this movie. I recognize almost every main actor and actress. Some of them are big, if not huge names now. Camille Bell looks a bit rough. I'm sure that she's not holy shit. You gotta go see this movie faster, man. I had the biggest crush on Dakota Fanning when I was 16 years old, so I was so happy when I saw her back in The Equalizer 3. But when I got into Rotten Tomatoes and I see that 250,000 people review this movie with a 42%, I was left speechless. So many people saying that the story is confusing, that the powers are confusing, that the acting is bad, that it feels as a Jason Bourne meets Heroes and the X-Files type of story, and that it ends like that. I'm not gonna go into spoilers, but it certainly doesn't. If anything, it sets up a sequel rather well. Sure, it's not a perfect movie, it has some patches here and there. For example, how can a sniffer find someone after they get separated from an object? Or why Carver didn't use more watchers to prevent getting ambushed. Despite that, it's a movie that respects its own rules rather faithfully. The funniest thing is that this film is everything that a movie made for the modern audience wants to be, except not shit. It has a huge diverse cast, good female representation, two of the most powerful metahumans are women, the bad guy is a government agency, and everything is narrated by a 13-year-old girl who's a bit sassy from time to time. And it has Chris Evans in it. Not a lot of gay people in it though. Put another 30 millions in it. A little bit more publicity and the potential that this story had was endless. You could have introduced more Division baddies, explored their backstories and how the Division was involved in major historical events. You could have set up a fight between them and the good guys, but not as a showdown or a flashy fight, but as a battle of wits and schemes, but with powers. Someone on Reddit said that this movie, Jumper, and Next might all be in the same universe. And it would make sense. Porters or teleporters are introduced in the comics and they're not far off from what Jumpers are like. All of them are being chased by an agency and Nick Cage could have easily been defined as a watcher that has a 2-minute range on the future. As long as they will cap it at some point after they defeat the Division or something like that, and they don't stretch it to the point where they lose sight of the main story. I'm looking at you, Fast X. Imagine the possibilities. But my biggest point is, we could have had a cinematic universe with Hayden Christensen and Nick Cage in it. But instead, we got She-Hulk and the Marvels.
We're on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
Push is definitely an underdog movie. I would even call it a cult classic. Everyone is welcome to like whatever they want, but I believe that it deserved more love than what it received. It's even under the golden Chris Gore's 2-hour mark. It's a fucking great movie that deserved at least a sequel. If you're from that time, it has that 2000 music video style to it. The aerial shots from Hong Kong markets, piers and street and how busy they are help to ground this movie even more, and they are very aesthetically pleasing in my opinion. So if you're tired of the shit that's been passing at cinema nowadays, go back in time a little bit and give this movie a try. I have the feeling that a lot of you are gonna like it. There's been a lot of negative talk about movies lately, and even though it's fun to shit on some poor quality television from time to time, after watching the Marvels, I felt like I needed a change from all the derogatory terms that are being sent our way by Nia DaCosta. By the way, stick it up your ass bitch, your movie's still bad. So I wanted to talk about a movie that I enjoyed and share it with you guys, see if you might enjoy it as well. But if you watch this fine too, leave us a like. Check out this video next. Let me know in the comments down below which is your cult classic movie that you think more people should know about. And as always, I've been Nacho. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.